Boom. Welcome back, Rare Talks. You already know what it is. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you haven't, make sure you go over to the Spotify, check out the exclusive episodes you got on the Spotify. And today I'm joined by a special guest.
Zubaydah Al Arabiya. You guys might know me from Speaker's Corner, but I'm currently on TikTok discussing political affairs, religion, and anything that's current.
And today we're going to be doing a rare reactions to the Migrant Hotel riot sparked by a 25-year-old man hassling a 16-year-old girl for her number. Before we even start, disclaimer. I like to do disclaimer on all of these videos. The views that are expressed in here are ours, not anybody else's. So don't try and pull it on this group or that group. This is clearly our views. So everything in this video is our views. So just for the record, I didn't know nothing about this. Zubaydah kind of bust me on this. I didn't even really know about this 25-year-old man harassing a 16-year-old or the girl that claimed to be 15-year-old for a number. What's your thoughts on that, just in general?
I think these situations, unfortunately, are quite common in terms of like older men trying to speak to teenage girls. The lines are very much blurred because as much as it is illegal, it is something that happens all the time where you find men in their mid-20s dating young girls. And so, like, unfortunately, this is where there needs to be a little bit more context because I'm not saying the girl hasn't been harassed, but when we have normal 15-year-old girls within society talking to grown men, are we now going to apply the same energy? And I think that all comes down to the way that British culture has started to change in terms of, you know, what is socially acceptable, what isn't socially acceptable. But in this case, I feel like the reason why there's being so much noise is because he's an immigrant. This is the main thing that we need to focus on because this has sparked off protests, riots, you know, and every day we see 25-year-old men talking to 16-year-old girls. But when it's migrants doing it, you know, when it's brown people doing it, this is where people have the most outrage, and I just find it quite hypocritical and double standards. Do you generally have an issue with 25-year-olds, regardless of where they're from, speaking to little girls, or do you have an issue when it's brown people doing it or Muslims doing it? That's the main conversation.
I think that's a very good conversation because I think a lot of people in general, they don't see it as a problem until you add the migrant or you add the foreigner or you add the European or you add the African or you add the, like, whatever's not accustomed to this country, then it's now a problem. And I think in all honesty, even watching the video back, the guy asked for the number, never got it. The girl said how old she was. He should have allowed it, really, personally. But maybe where he's from, it's normal. Because in some countries, it's a norm for people to be with younger girls to be with older men. I don't know. I'm not justifying what he's doing because it's a little bit weird. But that's been happening from back in the day, if I'm honest. It was just now that it's looked at as something that is bad. But in general, let's see what these guys got to say. So we're getting it from GB News, whatever they're called. So let's go to the start.
For the Mail on Sunday, and after a schoolgirl filmed herself apparently being propositioned by a cross-channel migrant, or if you're a Guardian reader, being culturally enriched by an asylum seeker, Liverpudlians have been rioting and setting fire to a police van, and they were so angry they didn't even nick the hubcaps first. Scott, you've got this one.
So if you notice in the beginning of the video, he says a Liverpudlian 16-year-old girl is being harassed by a migrant. Why does his citizenship have anything to do with this? The emphasis on migrant, like we said earlier before we started recording, why wasn't he not referred to as a 25-year-old man? Why is this sort of making sure to highlight he's a migrant? As if these things generally don't happen in British society. Migrants are not exclusively the only people that do these things. And this is why I said earlier, within British society, it is normal. Anybody that doesn't believe it's normal, you're either in your house, you don't get out much, but it is common for men in their 20s to go up to young girls and ask them for their numbers. But we don't see protests. We don't see people coming on the news and talking about this. But because it is a migrant, they are isolating him because he's a migrant, because there's an agenda.
So would we start as prejudice and discrimination to a certain extent then?
Absolutely.
Because obviously to be prejudiced, I'm not going to go as far as to say it was racist, but it could be seen as discrimination. And does that mean that England has a bigger problem than it seems like? So it's not actually the migrant workers, but the people here actually have a problem with people that are overseas workers in their country.
I think generally British people don't have an issue with legal migrants. If you're coming to this country to contribute, to pay into the system, I think generally British people don't mind this. I mean, as somebody that works in the hospital, the majority of people that I work with are from Nigeria, from the Philippines, from Kenya, and they're absolutely hard workers. We need them. We literally rely on these people in the places like the NHS, in hospitals. So if you're coming here with qualifications, with skills, Britain needs these helpers. Respectfully, like, even British people themselves are falling behind. If you look at the statistics on terms of benefit claimants, 52% of white people claim benefits in this country. That's more than half of the white population that claim benefits. If you look on the government website, it has an ethnicity breakdown of each ethnicity and what percentage of these people claim benefits. When you look at the white population, white English population, 52% of white English people claim benefits. So what's the 48% doing? So of course we need migrants in this country because half of the population are on benefits. Now, if I'm going to be fair, they could be on benefits for many reasons. Like, people think benefits are just because you're lazy. It could be disability allowance. Could be for many things. But the point is, more than half of the population is currently relying on benefits. So where are the workers? So this is where we bring the migrants in. So I think when it comes to normal migrants, no problem. You'd be a fool to want to reject people that are paying into the system. It's more about illegal migrants who are essentially coming here undocumented. We don't know who you are. We don't know what you're here for. You know, you don't have no skills as far as we're concerned. So then, therefore, instead of you paying into our system, we're now paying you to be here. And this is where some of the people are a little bit angry. And then you have added issues like this, where not only are these people allowed to come in here undocumented, we're paying for them in the hotels, and now they're harassing our girls.
That's a big problem now.
So this is a sort of main thing where I feel like some of them are coming from.
Let's play more.
Yes, a violent riot outside a migrant hotel last night was sparked by fury over an online video of a schoolgirl who said she was sexually harassed by a 25-year-old man, allegedly staying at the local hostel. She was walking by, she was speaking to a friend on her phone, and the guy said something suggestive to her. And she turned and she said, "What did you say?" And he repeated himself. And she said, "You know, you don't do this in this country. You'll go to jail for this."
We've actually got the clip to run.
And the video has been seen by 150,000, well, it's been on Twitter 150,000 times, so it's been witnessed, yeah.
Wow.
Are you going to run the clip?
How old are you?
25.
25. I'm only 15.
Okay, good.
That's not good.
I want your phone.
No, sorry.
What's up?
You don't do this in this country. It's you go to jail if you do this.
Please, I want.
No, you're all right. No.
All right, just watching that video, she said she was sexually harassed. Now, this is why I said language is very, very important when we're making accusations on people. To me, that's a false allegation of sexual assault. He didn't sexually assault her. He just asked. She said,
Sexually
"I'm young."
harassed.
Huh?
Sexually harassed, not
Yeah,
assault.
yeah. He just asked, "Can I get your number?" He didn't even say anything like out of place. He didn't say like, "Well, I want to do this with you, I want to do that with you." He just said, "Can I get your number?" She said, "You can go to jail for this." He said, you know, like baffed. Like he sounded baffed. He just sounded like he liked her and he wanted to get a number. That's what it sounded like to me. Was it right or wrong? I don't think it was right for him to be a 25-year-old man doing that. But she wasn't sexually harassed. He didn't touch her. He didn't reach out for her. He didn't force for her. He didn't sound aggressive. He just sounded like he was trying to get a girl's number. That's what it sounded like to me. So I don't like when the little girl's gone home and said, "I was sexually harassed." And it's crazy that she can just go home and say that. And then like, what happened? A guy asked for my number. What? Because that means that anyone who's a little bit older than you asks for your number, that's sexual harassment. If somebody likes somebody and they think, "Oh, if I go up to a woman and say you're beautiful," that's sexual harassment.
Yeah, I think the terminology that they're using is completely misleading. But again, to give context, they said that certain things happened prior to her recording. So they said that he sort of said some sexual gestures to her. But again, this is just sort of what she's claiming.
I'm 100% sure he never. And why I say that is because he would have started to reference it then. The fact that it's happened so fast, yeah, and that she pulled out the phone. She pulled out the phone with the intention to catch him to say, "I'm 15, you can go prison." That was the main thing. Not because if he said something sexual, she would have said, "Say what you said again," so she can get it. Does that make sense? And him being dumb would have been like, this, that. Do you know what I'm saying? And she would have got him. But he clearly never said that. It was because people said this video is not enough evidence to do him. So they've needed more. So she had to add to the story. Because obviously she all said that she was sexually assaulted. How? And if she felt like that and she was so highly, why didn't she just keep walking? Why did she have to pull out the phone? Remember, if you feel in danger as a woman, yeah, would you pull out your phone at that moment, or would you try and keep it stepping?
I think there's aspects of seeking an opportunity here, you know, and this is why we have to be very logical in these situations, because this person is wrong, right? First of all, whether you're even from a different country, I don't know where it's normal to approach a schoolgirl that's just coming out of school.
Yeah, that's
that in itself is just completely no. But in terms of sexually harassing and sexually assaulting, based on the video, that did not happen. He asked for her number, right? Now, I'm not justifying this, but maybe in his country, this is something that is normal. She's a woman, she's a girl, I can just approach her and I can speak to her. But in this country, that is not acceptable. And this is why a lot of these people do need to be briefed. How are you trying to come into a country when you don't even know the law? Like, it doesn't make sense, to be honest with you. If I'm going to remigrate to America, I'm sure that a lot of us know America's got very strict rules. I've got to make sure that I know what's legal, what's not legal. I've got to make sure that I know how to move. And I think this is one of the main things that is annoying some of these English people. Like, we've got this group of foreigners who don't understand our laws, who have a completely different way of thinking, and it's at the detriment of our own people. Because if you come here thinking that it's okay to approach young schoolgirls, then how are you going to eventually integrate into this society when you think that's normal, when it's not normal in this country? So I think from both sides, sexual harassment based on a video, that's misleading. I'm not seeing that at all. But at the same time, what this individual has done is completely wrong. But this goes back to the agenda behind this whole thing. How many times do we see white men approaching young 15-year-old girls? We don't see you guys doing a hoo-ha about it. So it seems like you only care about victims when brown people are doing it, but you don't care about victims when white men are doing it. This is the main point of this whole situation, right? Why does it offend you more when a black guy is talking to a white girl, or when a brown man is talking to a white girl? But when you have people of your own race who do it on a regular, by the way, we don't hear your voice.
Nothing.
Because you're hypocrites, and for me, it comes down to a level of insecurity. Some of these white guys, honestly, they don't like their women to be with other races, you know? And so this is why they frame it in a way where sexual assault, he's a rapist, he's this, he's that. When 9 out of 10 times, a lot of English women, they like men from different races. Allow her to have her choice. Why does that now make him a rapist or a bad person? So there's so much to sort of uncover in these sort of situations. It's not simply as migrant comes here and, you know, harasses an English girl. There's agendas behind this. There's context behind this that needs to be broken down so that the people don't get misled. Because unfortunately, based off that narrative, this is why they're kicking off in Liverpool. This is why there's riots and places being burnt down.
Well, do you think Liverpool just in itself is just like a place where they're unsavory to anything anyway? So it's like, for instance, you don't have to do much, like, because for me that wasn't enough for them to say, all right, let's go burn down this hotel, or let's go and do something to this hotel. It feels like there was an underlying issue in that community, and this just sparked it. Nothing comes out of nowhere. Doesn't make sense. When there's unrest with people, all you need is a video like this, and you can enrage that unrest that people are having. And I think that's what it's all come down to, because I can't see it, just one video can make everybody go that crazy. But I understand the internet is an easily manipulative place. Like, that video could have been true. That video could have been a social experiment, and we'd all believed it, just on the basis
It's
that
true.
we believe social media so much nowadays.
But you know what happened is, so with Liverpool itself, dating back to the 80s, there was something called a Toxus Riots, which was a race riot between black people and white people.
Okay.
It was big, right? Anybody knows about the Toxus Riots, it was something really big where a lot of the black community who had just moved in there were suffering hard. I watched the documentary, it was terrible what they were going through. And this sparked off the Toxus Riots between black and white, and eventually sort of paved the way for Liverpool to just allow it. We're here to stay. You can't be doing that to us, because, you know, going back to like the civil rights movement, which started in the 50s, this still continued until the 80s, even here in the UK, right? So the Toxus Riots sort of paved the way for these race riots to sort of settle down and say, look, we're not having this racism anymore. So that's a part of Liverpool's history. But also, Liverpool has also been a open door for migrants, specifically migrants from Ireland. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, an Irish migrant is different to a Syrian migrant to a certain extent, because the Irishman is white. He can easily just walk in there, no one's really going to look at him the way that he would look at a Syrian. It's not to say that Irish people haven't suffered, because they have, but the response and the welcoming is a little bit different, especially in the 21st century with the political climate around the Muslim perception, you know? So when they know Muslim is moving in, they were like, what, terrorist, compared to Irish, okay, right, we can sort of, yeah? So they have been welcoming to certain communities. But also another thing that happened recently in Liverpool, I think it was last year, a Muslim Syrian guy, who, by the way, was a Christian, because many people tried to frame him to be a Muslim. He was Muslim, converted to Christianity. He basically got into a taxi, told the taxi to drive him outside a hospital, and he committed a suicide attack. He blew himself up, and he blew the cab up outside of a hospital. So these Liverpool people are looking at like, hold on. We've got a migrant here who's committing terror attacks outside hospitals, but they allowed that. Funny enough, they actually stayed a little bit quiet about that. And then now this has happened. Now they're like, enough is enough.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying to you?
And that's what I was saying to you before. There had to be some sort of unrest before this. It couldn't just come out of nowhere and it's made everybody go this crazy. So yeah, let's keep playing.
That's the clip there, and some local residents were up in arms about this. And
they showed up at this migrant center and they started to make accusations, and they started to pelt the police with missiles and forced the police to wear protective clothing, including riot gear, shields, and helmets. A total of 15 people have so far been arrested by the Merseyside police. And there was a charity group, some members there were cornered in the migrant center itself. Couldn't get out.
And they said they were cornered by right-wing thugs, which I thought, Christain, don't you think, like, they always say, this is racism, this is far-right extremism, and really it just seems like it's motivated by concern for the child and concern for what's being done.
Look, I mean, on the one hand, saying they were up in arms is putting it mildly. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like police vans on fire. It looks like last days of the world. It's outrageous. But having said that, everybody's now hearing about the Rotherham problem again. Rotherham grooming gangs. I shouldn't say problem.
Yeah.
And I understand.
And other...
So again, what's funny? It's like, this is what I said. There's always an agenda behind everything. And let's be honest. Look what they're saying now. Rotherham grooming gangs. A guy just moved to a girl. Where did a gang get involved in this? So it's like, that man done this. Like, it's a reason to bring back something to cause, and I say this causes more division than unity, because when people start opening up these conversations, which are needed, but at the same time, we're bringing up stuff to like try and bring a contrast to make our reasoning why we're acting the way that we're acting. When in hindsight, if a man's done something that's illegal, then the police do their job. And I think that's fair to say that we're all in a country where the police will do their job. If someone's done a crime, they'll do their job.
This is the problem, right? This is something that's very, very deep. The police haven't done their job in terms of the grooming gangs. And this is what's actually made a lot of English people feel like these Pakistanis are getting away with what they're getting away with, and the police are not doing anything about it. And they are right to a certain extent. The police did not do anything about it. Why? Because the police were scared of being called racist. Now I'll tell you where the hypocrisy is. When you lot are beating down on black folks and you're arresting them and searching them without any warrant, that's not racism. But when it comes to trying to protect white girls from Pakistani men, you're scared to be called a racist. So police are happy to be racist in certain situations and discriminate against certain communities. But when it comes to trying to convict Pakistani men for raping white girls, we're too scared of the backlash. We don't want to be perceived to be racist. This is one of the Metropolitan's talking points. When they were questioned and they said, why did you not act faster when it comes to the grooming gangs? They said, we don't want to be called racist because it's an in-house community thing. What? But when it comes to the discrimination that you want to show to black people, especially here in London, you don't care about being called racist then. So the police themselves openly said, you can find this on any article, we don't want to be deemed to be racist. So they took a seat back, because initially what a lot of these groomers were saying that these girls are our girlfriends. So they tried to legitimize the grooming by saying, these girls are our girlfriends, stop interfering with my personal life. What, you don't like Pakistani man with white girl? This is how they flipped it. So the police got scared. They shut their mouths. So this is why a lot of those people are angry. The Pakistani grooming gang things is outrageous. It is a massive scandal. But at the same time, going back to the original point, when it is white pedophiles, when it is white grooming gangs, We don't see this energy. And they actually done a recent statistic where they proved that the majority of groomers in Britain are made up of white men.
So why is that not spoken about? Is it because the country itself is majority white and they don't want that to be like the focus point? Because then it takes away the validity of their arguments of the grooming gangs are people of different heritage to English people.
But the point is as well, is that taking away the fact that majority of white men are groomers, because it is a majority white country, so obviously there's going to be more white people statistically. But
Still doesn't make it right.
of course. But what about the white men? Because they make the argument these Pakistani guys come to this country specifically to target white girls. That's their only intention. But don't white middle-aged white men go to Philippines and Gambia to specifically target children? And that's the statistics. Statistically, you don't see Asian man, you don't see black man go into poor countries to sexually abuse children. You see white middle-aged men from Canada, from England, from Germany, from France, go into the Dominican Republic, go into Gambia to specifically, they're not there on a business trip. They literally bought that ticket to go and do these things and come back knowing that they're going to get scot-free away with it. But we don't see the same energy because, again, I believe that there is a certain level of insecurity coming within certain people when they see white women with non-white men. But at the same time, for me, I put it like this. A nonce is a nonce.
Facts.
Whether you're black, white,
Facts.
Chinese, I don't care about all that. That doesn't even play a part. You're a nonce. And you deserve your head to be kicked in as far as I'm concerned. But for these people, they differentiate nonce like this. Muslim, nonce. White man, turn a blind eye. This is how they're dealing with the issue. And that actually shows that you are not even consistent or sincere about your message.
Didn't Tommy Robinson have a friend that was a nonce once? What's his name again? What's that guy's name?
So Tommy Robinson had two members of the EDL, Richard Price.
Richard Price, that's the name. I was waiting for that name. Richard Price.
And
yes.
Lee McMillan.
Lee McMillan.
Lee McMillan was convicted of grooming underage girls as young as 13 in the 90s with cigarettes and alcohol. Imagine
isn't that the same thing that he's fighting for though?
Imagine the same thing that you're fighting against grooming. You had, and this guy wasn't just a normal member of the EDL. He was the group organizer. He was the group organizer, right? Organized these events. And in the 90s, you was doing the dirty, but yet you want to come here and organize events to fight against the same thing that you was doing. Make it make sense, please. Does it even make sense?
He thought his history could be brushed under the carpet.
And then Richard Price, lastly, was convicted. And after he was convicted, Tommy Robinson believed it was a setup. Listen to this, because I actually had a debate about this yesterday, and somebody that supports Tommy Robinson broke it down for me. She basically said to me that Richard Price was convicted, charged. Tommy Robinson, instead of disassociating with him, like, you're a nonce, you've been convicted, I'm free from you, Tommy Robinson believed that he was set up by the state and actually went out of his way to campaign and try to get this person released. Now, what if the guy was Pakistani? You would have believed it. If a Pakistani guy was convicted, you wouldn't even thought, oh, the state is trying to set him up. But because it's your own friend, you believe that the state was trying to set him up when he's just been charged and convicted of these horrendous crimes. So again, that's a whole another side issue, right? Tommy Robinson, that deserves another podcast. But the point is, there's a lack of consistency, there's a lack of sincerity, and there's a clear-cut bias in terms of these situations, which isn't helping the situation at all.
No problem.
Yeah.
And understandably, parents are terrified, I guess. And I feel like it's sort of a straw that's going to break the camel's back, isn't it? People are already... you've said before that the migrants should be housed near the Guardian journalists.
Well, yes, I don't understand why they put the migrants in impoverished and vulnerable working class communities when it's Guardian readers who are massively keen and massively in favour of cross-channel migrants coming here. So everybody would be much happier if we passed a law that said if you subscribe to The Guardian, you've got to have 7 Albanian...
Okay, old man. Oh, my God, you sound like my grandfather. He's dead for 2 years. No, I think people are concerned...
What is this guy talking about?
That was kind of a mad racist joke. That was a mad racist... Do you know what I call that? I call that... what's that? It's called subtle racism. So
right, passive racism.
Yeah, it's like because that's with the cameras on. Always, my mum always said that a joke that someone makes with the cameras on is always intensified when the camera's off. So I could go to any length when the camera's off because I know the camera's not on. So I'll say the worst of things, but when the camera's on, a little bit will come out like slip, and then I'll try and laugh it off like it was a joke. Yeah, Albanians. Why did he have to, like, whenever I hear someone make something specific to a nation of people, I already know that he already has some sort of bias or racism or prejudice or discrimination against them, because that's the first thing that comes to your mind. It's the same. We're all humans. We all have the same. Like, if you think, it's always the same thing. Whenever you have a bias against someone, there's always an image of that bias inside of your mind. See, his one, and look at him smiling as well. Look at the smile. That is an evil smile. That smile is evil. He's basically trying to pull it out there that Albanians, let them go and live with them people. Like, to say that living with him or in impoverished areas, why don't we go to the root of the problem? If the area is impoverished, why are we not trying to cure that issue over the overriding issue? Does that make sense? Of trying to help people get out of poverty, than just saying, just because they're in this area, bring them with the rich people. And if you listen closely to what he said about Albanians, he's laughing it off now as if it's a joke, but that is where racism stems from, having a negative stereotype against people and then forcing that opinion on public platforms like this. He's on a news channel where now, look how much people watch this video. Like 241k people now think all migrants are Albanians.
See, so basically with this actual YouTube channel, GB News, from what I know about them, they're more right-winged ideologically, which means they're anti-immigration, slightly anti-Muslim. They are like on that end of the spectrum. So as much as they sugarcoat it and have these little cheeky laughs, a lot of people could say that they have racist ideologies, but they're like a major news channel, right? So that's just to put the context out there as to who this actual, what we're watching here is coming from, a right-wing media source. In terms of immigration, right, these people are very much anti-immigration. And I believe to a certain extent that immigration has become out of control, if I'm going to be completely honest, just based off the fact that we are currently going through an economic crisis, right? And if we can't even look after our own people, right, how are we supposed to take on an extra group of people and look after them too? But at the same time, because the reason why I say this is because I look at things from both sides. And both sides have valid points, because I'm not going to sit here and just say, oh, you're racist. That's not an argument. You can't just call somebody racist because they have a different opinion to you. You're victimizing yourself in that sense. If we look at this from a wider perspective, legal migrants, refugees and asylum seekers, right? What is a refugee? A refugee is different to a illegal migrant. So an illegal migrant, we don't know nothing about you. You've just literally entered through France, come on a boat, got here at the borders, you're 25 years old, that's all we know about you. We don't know why you're here, what country you come from. We don't know anything about you. But a refugee now is somebody like my father, actually, who came from Iraq, right? Iraq was a war-torn country. It was going through so much turmoil. So my father applied to get citizenship in this country through refugee status, and he was granted that, because that is a legitimate reason for you to come here. A refugee is somebody fleeing from Syria, fleeing from Afghanistan. A refugee, it's in its name, somebody that is seeking refuge. And based on the laws in this country, human rights, Britain is obliged to take in refugees, okay? It is obliged, especially with things like Afghanistan. Recently, 20 years they spent in Afghanistan bombing their country. So this is why a lot of Afghanis can come here without no problem, because they have the right to. We bombed your country for 20 years. Now the Taliban has taken over. They have the right to come to this country. But let's say somebody now coming from, I don't know, Egypt. Egypt is not a war-torn country, so to speak. You know, it's not a country that has civil war. Yes, there's corruption going on in Egypt, and there's certain, problems that are going on in Egypt. But other than that, what are you trying to seek refuge for? I'm just saying this from a Home Office perspective, right? Because I've actually looked into this, and it's not as easy as many people think. You know, when it comes to immigration, there's so many questions that need to be asked. There's so many people that exploit the immigration process. So a refugee is we support that. You should support refugees. You should support families and young women and children and men who are being persecuted or potentially going to die to come into this country to seek refuge. That's no problem. Legal migrants who have skills, who have qualifications, they should also be invited to this country to contribute. But young, middle-aged or young men who we have no background on who these individuals are, people who are coming in here expecting a handout, because essentially a lot of people do. They think Britain is this sort of, they think it's Dubai to a certain extent, where everything is just luxurious and everything is handed out. People have been known to exploit the benefit system as well. Migrants have also exploited the benefit system. Like, why do we sit here and constantly throw out racism, when there are times where we have to look at ourselves and think, to be honest with you, they've got a slight point here. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm not sitting here like saying I agree with everything, but in terms of immigration, it has become a problem.
Do you think so? I think that immigration is the way that society has been for, I think from the beginning of time, people have been immigrating around the world. So it's never been a problem because there was never borders. There was never somebody telling you that you're not allowed to enter somewhere. There's always been a place where you could just come and cut through. And majority of the times people did it for the financial reasons. It was never, or for a better life. It was never for the sake of, let me come here and try and exploit the system. Now we can exploit the system because there's holes in the system that has created that. But that's not our problem. That's the government's problem.
Right.
And I feel like the government have done it because they knew that this would be the outcome, and then eventually it would fester unrest, and then it would fester people saying, we want you out of our country. So I generally don't think nothing's done without purpose in this country. But we're in a first world country, not a third world country, where things are just happening. People have control. People can do things. There's money. We've got power. We've got police force. We've got the army. We've got so many things in this country. So for me personally, I don't think that immigration is a problem. I think that people have been immigrating for years all over the world. I think it's a problem now because people have become to the point where, like I said, they're finessing. But in general, immigration has never been a problem. And we can't ever look at it like that because most of our families came here as migrant workers, if I'm honest, or we came as people that wanted a better life for their families. And some of us have created it, and I'll say majority of people have done that for their families. That's why our parents were, I say it, in survival mode. Survival mode wasn't in winning mode. So they came here, got a place, paid their rent, paid their council tax, live low by, send their children to school, and that was for them putting food and gas and stuff on the electric and a few little extras here and there. That was what they classed as like, yeah, we're living. Does that make sense? But it wasn't. To us, as the younger generation growing up now, we're like, no, we really want to live. We want to fly around the world. We want to do this. We want to do that. We want to own house. We want to own. So I feel like migrants and people coming here and immigration is not a problem. The problem is that the way that the system's made it very easy for people to finesse it, that's actually a problem.
To be honest, that's a very good point. There's a very good point, and that's given a lot of context to the situation. But nonetheless, I mean, immigration, like you say, has been something that's been around since human history. Yeah, we've moved around quite a lot, but the immigration that we find in history is very different to the immigration that we're seeing now. And I'll tell you why, because the immigration throughout history was based on survival. For instance, why did Europeans invade so many lands? Because if you're trying to survive and you live in a very cold climate, there's no vitamin D, there's no sun, so you can't even grow no crops. We've got to move elsewhere. So they're moving until eventually they find a place to settle. We're not in that situation no more. Every country has infrastructure to a certain extent, has the technology. So why are we seeing people moving around so much? Like, for instance, I have a view where we should rebuild Africa again, rebuild Middle East, rebuild Asia. It breaks my heart to know that people are fleeing their countries, especially a place like Africa with so much resources. Wallahi, if African nations united and they profited off their own resources, it would be like a kingdom on earth. But instead, they're being exploited by European colonial forces because colonialism is still happening, but it's economic colonialism, right? They're economically colonizing these countries. I think
the Chinese are doing it the most.
Chinese are doing the same thing, right? So these people can't even flourish in their own country. So what are they going to do? They're going to sit there and say, yeah, all right, I'm just going to continue to be exploited, or let me go to Europe where the money's at. So what we're seeing now is a different type of immigration that really shouldn't be happening because historical immigration was based off survival. Right now in 2023, there is enough in this world for everybody to flourish. But there is still these colonial powers that are exploiting and not allowing certain countries to catch up Like, we know how, we've discovered how to pump water. We've discovered electricity. Why are people still poor? If this knowledge is out there worldwide to known to the world, why is it now we still have people living under the poverty line? It shouldn't be happening.
A wise man once said, without poor people, there will never be rich people. So you can't ever think that the cure is to make everybody equal, because it's impossible, for number one, because there's always going to be something called capitalism. Capitalism is the need for more. The need for more is intrinsically in all humans. We all want the need for more. Depending what you put that into can either be beneficial or detrimental. So for instance, I'll give you an example. Someone's need for more is to read more books. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But someone's need for more could be, I want to take all these houses and lick them all down because I want to build new houses here. So I'm going to move all you people out. I don't care where you go. I don't care about your families, but I care about, I need to make more houses because I need more money, and there's more migrants in London than ever. Most of these houses, these new houses you see being built, is because of how many people are in the UK. Remember, English people are not reproducing how they used to. Everything's about economy. So I don't want to have children. I think English women are like the less reproductive women in the UK, if I'm honest with you. That's why they said in a few years they're going to be washed out, because you got Asians breeding at all time, you got black people building at all time high, but then you got white people that's having like 1 or 2 children maximum,
or having multiple abortions and are on the pill all the time.
Yeah, so that's another conversation for another day. But yeah, you get the point of what I'm trying to say. So all these places being occupied is not even, they're not even being made for the normal English person, because they could just live in a studio flat, me and my missus, because we're not really going to have kids. But there's some people that got 5 or 6 children, so where do we put them now?
Sense.
And this is the reason why they're building more houses. But there's somebody who understands this, so he's finessing the system, saying, if I put 10 houses in there, I can put private, and then I can put some government ones to make it look like I'm helping the people in the community a little bit, get some money from the government. It's all a ploy. So I see both sides to this. It's not just one-sided to me. So immigration for me it's not as bad as we make it sound sometimes. I believe that the people that told us to vote outside of Brexit, I want to know where they are right now, because we're in big problems. We're in big problems. See all these buildings that you see getting built, like these are you go there, half of the people there are Romanians. I'd say even, and this is not being biased, because I used to work on a building site, 80% of the people were Romanians.
Yeah.
80. That's how I learned Romanian by working with them. Imagine that you learned a language because you're working with people so much. Yeah. That was the most people. There was other people from other ethnicities, but the majority of people was them.
But that's the same thing with me, working in the hospitals. The majority of people that I'm working with are Nigerians. Very hardworking people. I'm telling you, if these people didn't turn up to work, we would have been in big trouble. These are the people that are frontliners in an environment where people need
That's
care.
Another conversation. We need to have a conversation about that, because I have a family member that's had mental health for years, and every hospital you went to, the majority of nurses in the mental health are Nigerians.
Nigerian, yeah. From what I have seen of Nigerians, they're very hard workers. Very, very hard workers. They're very motivated. Like some of them will come to work with us, and they just landed from Nigeria. Just landed. Like I met a lady, she came to work with us, and she just got to got to England the other day. It was her first time, and they put her straight into the workforce, because if she was not there, we wouldn't have nurses. Like, especially as you know, the recent climate, you got nurses striking, teachers striking, doctors striking, because it's like another thing that is making a lot of these English people annoyed is that when we put people in these hotels, they're costing millions to fund, right? Whilst nurses, doctors who are doing like work that is saving people's lives are getting paid peanuts. So they're looking at it like, we're here actually saving people's lives, we're not getting any money. But these people who just landed here, they get hotels, they get everything for free basically. And this is, and again, I can also understand it from that perspective as somebody who works long hours, 12-hour shifts, and it's not enough. Like the other day, I worked 50 hours. I've done 5 12-hour shifts, 12 hours, non-stop. And when I got my cut, I felt to cry. The amount that they taxed me was absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Those 12 hours just simply wasn't enough. And then you have people who come here, we don't know who they are, they're just getting free handouts.
That's where I think that's where all of our grievances, if I'm honest, because even my grievances with that. Let's keep
I
playing.
think people are concerned about everyone's safety. And I think what concerns me is the police then came out after this happened and said, you know, quote, social media speculation, misinformation and rumor can actually damage the outcome of the investigation. And it seems as though police are distancing themselves from it and saying, you're to blame for being concerned. You're to blame for running this video on Twitter. You're to blame for showing what actually really happened.
Yeah.
And that makes me angry because, like, don't blame the victim for something that occurred and is now causing her great amounts of anxiety, because what you then do is you take the power away from the investigation itself, because now no one's going to believe the outcome of it. As you say, Guardian readers are going to think that the police are too right-wing, and the people that protest are going to think the other way around. No, there's not going to be any common ground. There's no conversation.
And we've seen this time and again, over 2 decades of grooming gangs. From Rotherham to I think Telford was the most recent one, where authorities and police prevaricate and they say, oh no, but it's not, you know, we've got to tread so carefully, and anybody who complains, social workers who raise it as an issue get sent on diversity training, and everybody's got to tiptoe around the issue, when really it's a serious issue. And
it's still happening.
Well,
if they don't tiptoe, though, look what happens. People.
Okay, so again, bringing up the grooming gangs issue, how police are scared. Now, as far as I'm concerned, when police are dealing with an investigation, a very serious investigation, when other people who are not police officers are on social media trying to interpret the case the way that they want to interpret it, you're messing up our investigation. Fall back. Let us handle it. But by you running around starting riots and doing the most and grooming gangs this and grooming, you're interfering with an investigation. We are the police officers. Let us investigate. We don't need your interpretation of what happened, because we're the ones with the resources to deal with this investigation. And sometimes a lot of these people, when you make a hoo-ha about an ongoing investigation, you tamper with what's actually going on. Let the police handle it, because the way that you're handling it obviously is making matters worse. Because I'm sure this little girl is probably, I don't know what she's thinking, but imagine just based off her videoing that her whole city's on fire. Does she even want that? Let's be honest. If she's as a victim, right? Would I really want that? Whilst I'm going through these anxious feelings, and now there's mass protests going on and potentially the far right are going to get involved. You're not helping the victim's case because you're politicizing the victim's case. You're using this innocent girl's pain and suffering, whatever she's gone through, for your own biased agendas. You're politicizing the issue, and you're not actually helping the girl to get justice, because now you're going to start into something else. Now, second of all, when they sit here, this is what I just spoke about, yeah? About police being scared of being called racist. If you heard what the geezer said, they're putting social workers to do diversity training. Why?
I'm as baffed as you are. Like,
in my head, we're talking about young girls being groomed here. What does diversity training have to do with that, as far as I'm concerned? Why are we now tippy-toeing because we don't want to offend anybody? I don't care if he's Pakistani or if he's Arab. What do you mean diversity training? Diversity training so what, you don't offend their community? When members of their community are grooming girls, but you're so scared about being offensive. Because the thing is, and I'm going to be honest with you, it comes down to sometimes people overusing the race card. So and Muslims do it a lot as well. They will say, oh, you're being racist towards me. Oh, you're targeting me because I'm a Pakistani. Oh, you're targeting me because of X, Y, and Z. This has got nothing to do with that. These are young children being abused.
Facts.
We shouldn't dibble-dabble, because essentially social workers and police officers, like I said earlier, they're scared of being called racist. They're scared of getting involved in these investigations because they're scared that people will say, oh, you're targeting the Pakistanis specifically because they're Pakistanis. No, the police shouldn't target anybody because of their race. They should target them because they are criminals.
Facts.
That's it. Facts. But what we live in is a generation where everything is politicized. Everything has to do with this, everything has to do with that, except for the actual issue. And that's why I say, a nonce is a nonce. Whatever colour you are, I don't really care. That doesn't have anything to play in this. You're a scumbag, so therefore you should be treated like a scumbag. And scum comes in many different shapes and sizes and different colours and creed. But again, because we live in this cancel culture, this woke culture, we sit here and we make perpetrators look like they're victims out of fear of offending them. Well, if saving a girl's life means that you're offended, then stay offended, as far as I'm concerned.
But they have to be genuine perpetrators, though, because at the same time, we don't just want to be going around and trying to mob people down for things that they haven't actually done. As we've seen in the video, the man asked for her number, yeah? Whether they say, they look, and they've changed the title, this is hassling 16-year-old girl for a number. Well, to me, he just tried to get a girl's number. Whether you class that as hassling, if she says no and I'm too young, then class done. The conversation's done. Walk off. But I didn't see any essay. That's what my whole point was, because that's what the girl tried to file for. We have to be real with what's actually happening. Does it make sense?
And has he been arrested? Like, if this person...
I don't even know. Has it even got a picture of him? I don't know. I think I saw a picture or something of him, but because he was filming down. But in general, yeah, we have to make sure that the person is actually guilty before we bring these things to social media. Because, like you said, it doesn't just tamper with the case, but it erupts emotions of people that could negatively affect a community of people. Because now what happens is a war against people that are not white against people that are, like, do you see what I'm saying? Now I'm going to work and my colleague at work in Liverpool saying, you're one of them guys, aren't you? And I'm like, nah, bro, I work. And he's like, I should smash you up. And I'm like, brother, I'm not involved.
Right.
Do you see what I'm going? An Albanian man, I'm like, you're Albanian, innit? He's like, yeah. He's like, I don't like your people. I don't like what they do in this country. And you're like, yeah, I don't know, whoever done that. I think he was an Arab. They're like, you're all the same. And you're like, no, I'm Albanian. Albanians in Europe. And he's like, yeah, I know about you guys, you little Muslim guys. Bro, please, you're getting... Because this is where it goes. This is where it goes. And then what I said to you, it creates more of a divide. You see, for years, we've been fighting for not equality, but for us to live harmoniously with each other. And I think that's very key. In the UK, it's I'd say, the most diverse place in the world in terms of... You can meet, in London anyway, you can meet every nationality of people. In one day, you can go through 5 areas, and in them 5 areas, you've seen you can go see a Pakistani area, Bengali area, a Portuguese area, a Somali area, a Jamaican area, a Colombian area, bro, Algerian area. Bro, there's so many different walks of life in London, of cultures that are all bonded together, and I feel like we're all living in harmony. And when things like this happen, it destroys the unity. Remember, that's one person. We can't say all migrant workers are like that. That's where the problem comes, when we're labeling and stereotyping people. If we was to do that in the sense of reality, then we'll say all white men are pedophiles.
Absolutely. And people like this are very, very dangerous, because essentially what certain far right-wing people want is a race war in this country. They've been egging it on for years. Tommy Robinson, there's so many different organizations that have been trying to push for some sort of internal civil war between either Muslims and non-Muslims and black and white, as we clearly saw with the whole BLM thing that happened in Trafalgar Square when Tommy Robinson done the call out. So there is these dark powers at play who are essentially trying to egg on some sort of internal civil war between certain groups, and it's people like this who are not trying to bring calm to the situation. Not one of them said, you know what, guys, let's actually calm down, because it is one guy, and let's try to find some solutions. It's using this situation to gaslight people, to tell people that they should act upon the situation, and then associating irrelevant situations to something that's got nothing to do with it by, again, mentioning the grooming gangs. These people are essentially stirring the pot, right? And then, like you said, when innocent people like myself or yourself who've got nothing to do with this are targeted because some crazy person has been brainwashed by this rhetoric, gets hurt, these people will sit there and get exactly what they want. There needs to be calm, and there needs to be solutions. I'll be honest with you, this one little situation didn't deserve all that madness, unless there's something deeper.
And that's what I was trying to say to you, the unrest from something before. And now you've said to me that the year before, there was a madman that went and done something crazy. Now, when people say that someone's done something, I always interpret it as...
Yeah, go on, sorry.
I always interpret it as, say, for instance, someone who went to go and blow themselves up. I don't look at that as something to do with Islam. I look at that as someone to do with mental health.
But he was a Christian. And that's probably why there wasn't a big uproar. Because that's one thing that I realised, right? And this actually shows the agenda. This guy that went and spoke to this 15-year-old girl, they're presuming he's Muslim. Riots. But a Christian guy who blew himself up outside a hospital... Nothing. Where's this guy? Imagine going outside the hospital.
I didn't even know about it. Imagine you're saying to me, I'm shocked. I'm like, you're making me want to go do my research. I didn't even know.
Imagine going outside a hospital and trying to blow up the taxi driver inside the hospital, and there could have been like children and whatever, and there was no riots. There was no riots to this level.
It wasn't even public news because I didn't even know, man.
Why was that? I want to ask the people of Liverpool respectfully, why was that? Was it because he wasn't a Muslim, or because he didn't fit the criteria of what you guys deem to be whatever? Because again, I'm not saying what this guy done was right, but it seems like there's still a little bit of context because the girl pulled out a phone at a certain point. We don't know what happened before. We don't know what happened afterwards. Based on what we saw, it's wrong. Don't get it twisted. But the narrative is sexual harassment, sexual assault. So, you know, this is why it's important, I feel like, that we're breaking this down, because any low IQ person who ain't got a brain cell will listen to this, take it as gospel and act upon it. When there is so much context around these sort of stuff that you shouldn't believe necessarily what you hear on the media firsthand. Do your research. Understand the history of Liverpool. Understand, you know, who this news channel is as well. I just told you this is a right-wing news channel. I
didn't even know that.
Anybody can research GB News. GB News has actually validated a lot of right-wing views. They're the ones who talk about migrants a lot. This is a right-wing news channel. And this is the narrative that they're coming out with.
Well, if they don't tiptoe, though, look what happens. People then start pelting the police and start fires and turn cars over and corner this care group in a parking lot in Liverpool. And suddenly everyone's threatening each other's lives.
Yeah. Well, it's almost as if dealing with the issue, dealing with the cross-channel migrants would have been a good option. Instead of stopping that happening, stopping the flights to Rwanda.
I do wonder, I wonder how the Balkans are dealing with it, because the Balkan number of migrants coming in from the eastern part of Europe are much farther greater than what's coming over to the UK.
Yeah.
And those Balkan countries tend to have some quite conservative political parties running them. So I wonder how they're dealing with this issue.
Well, the conservative, I mean, in Sweden, for example, the conservative political party, for the first time in decades, they've got a right-wing party, and that's because of the migrant crisis.
Sweden's had some real problems in the last 5 years. Yeah, it's been terrible there.
Yeah.
Imagine you said it, and they all said it at the end. They said it at the end, right? Yeah, they got a right-wing. Yeah, they got a right-wing guy in there now. Yeah, like that's wild. So
well, like I said, Britain's news channel. There you go. This is the voice of Britain. You know, they're letting us know we're British people. Yeah. So again, they support right-wing governments, right-wing ideologies. Actually, let's go through the comments, because you see the comments. That's the most sauciest part of it.
Let's go through the comments. So this is the comments now. So we have Dim FM says, calling people who are against child abuse far right is beyond words. All right. Penny Lane, the police job is to serve and protect. That means protect the victim, not the perpetrator. Correct?
But they're not protecting the perpetrator, though. You lot are. How are you trying to get justice for a girl by rioting against the police when the police are supposed to be the ones that are helping? Imagine, like, I want the police to help, but I'm going to go and throw fire or try to tear the police car down. That doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. People of this country need to stand up and protect these girls, as the government and police have proved they won't.
So this is a classic case of somebody wanting to be a warrior 20 years later. Where was you outside Prince Andrews? I don't get it. Like, all of a sudden, we need to protect this country. Where was you when Jimmy down the road was doing the same thing? Where was you when Prince Andrew has recently been convicted? Where was you outside some of these churches that have abused young boys for 60 years? Where were you? But because it's a brown face, yeah, all of a sudden you got your warrior spirit. This is what I don't like, the hypocrisy. Because paedophilia, unfortunately, is an institutional thing in this country.
Facts.
And I'll tell you why. Recently, they convicted a police officer who, for 36 years, not 36 years, raped 36 women.
17 years, I think he's been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think 17
police officer. Yeah. There is a database out there, which one day I would like to show, which is a database with all the police officers throughout the UK and their convictions. This is a very secret database. It has become public, but it's hard to get hold of it. And it has police officers' names and the crimes that they committed whilst in office. And the amount of these crimes that were rape and child abuse, I felt to cry. I literally felt to cry knowing that these are police officers in the police force committing these crimes. Last year, 70 members of parliament were investigated for sexual misconduct in office, MPs. Prince Andrew essentially paid off his victim that he abused. Social services were involved in the grooming gang cases. I'll tell you a situation, Rare Talks here. What made me shocked about how the police and social services were involved in these grooming gang cases made me scared. So there was a young grooming gang victim who was with a guy called Arsha Hussain, I think that's his name, and she was underage. But like I said to you earlier, he was saying that this is my girlfriend. So her mother specifically said, my daughter's dating this older guy. I can't control her anymore. So her mother put her in care. Her mother sent her to a care home, right? Why is it now that the care home was allowing this perpetrator to come and visit the girl?
What do you mean?
So imagine I've got a daughter and she's
Yes.
dating an older man.
So why are they what?
The care home allowed him.
But how though? Why though?
The care home said and validated that was her boyfriend. So the care home, instead of saying this guy's a 40-year-old man trying to visit a girl in care as her boyfriend, they said, well, it's her boyfriend. She's allowed to have visits. That for me blew my mind. Second of all, there was a case where an elderly Pakistani man was in a car park with a young English girl. She was giving him oral sex. Police were called. When police got there, they saw what was going on in the car park. That's what she's doing. And the police said to him, what's going on here, mate? He goes, well, can't you see? She's sucking me off. And the police walked off. Police didn't sit there and this, you can go research this, people. Everything I say is fact checked. And I can even post it in the comment section. Instead of the police going there and saying, what's going on here? First of all, I'm sure that even having sex in a public place is a crime in itself.
Big crime.
Right? Instead of saying, what the hell's going on here? Got a young girl. Can I take some details? Stop, what's going on? Right, can you stand over there? You stand over there. I want to get your name and address. What the hell's... Police walked off. And then there was a second case where a young 13-year-old English girl was taken by 5 Pakistani men to their flat by herself. And they gave her alcohol. And she got really drunk. 13-year-old girl can't handle that out. She's a kid. She started making up noise, and the neighbours called the police and said, look, we don't know what's going on. There's a girl, she's drunk, she's going crazy. Police turned up. Who do you think they arrested? They arrested the little girl for drunken disorderly behaviour. So imagine now as a police officer, you go into a house, there's 5 grown men. And there's a 13-year-old drunk girl. Instead of telling all those men to face the wall and put their hands behind their back, the girl got arrested for drunken disorderly behaviour. Even though she was the underage girl, she was 13 years old. Police never thought, why is there a young 13 drunk girl with 5 old men?
That's wild. The police said I went in there and broke up every... Anyway, I talk anyway.
But tutus now, if you're standing on the road and you smell of weed, man's pinning you to the floor and kicking you in your back.
Man up. Man's holding some licks. To be honest, man's holding some licks. So my whole thing was, that's wild. I didn't know
Rare
that.
Talks is very deep. And to whoever's listening, is very deep. Go down the rabbit hole. I'll give you a bit of homework. Go and type in sexual abuse cases in Britain. Sexual abuse cases in Britain, and just go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a list of child sexual abuse cases dating back to the 60s. And they are in care homes, they are in churches, football clubs.
Now, I heard about something like that, but it hasn't been exposed properly.
No, it has. There has been certain football clubs where the coaches were abusing the young boys, sexually abusing the young boys. Multiple football clubs.
Big football clubs as well, from what I've heard. Big football clubs, not small clubs. But it's
Yeah,
kept
I
it
mean,
on
for
the
me,
low.
I don't really know much about football, but these are football clubs. And then it's only in the recent years that it starts going into the grooming gang. So it has a long case of sexual abuse cases. And towards the end, yes, you have the Pakistani groomers, but it's been going on way before that. Way before that. So, you know, people need to definitely be aware of these things.
So on in the comment section says the British citizens are actually standing up for the children, unlike the police or the politicians. Cool. Good on that child. Very maturely and well handled. This is not just look, I'm not buying. This is not going away as an issue. People have had enough. Nikki Israel says, from her voice, the young lady sounds genuine. You can hear the anxiety in her voice. I believe her. And I congratulate her for taking the risk of filming this very brief conversation to make a point to hopefully get protection.
Do you see? I can't lie.
Her parents should be proud of her. And to the police, I say, find every single pervert in the world, capture them, and do not let them out of prison ever. No young girl or young man should ever have to be put with this. And stop being so narcissistic. It's not okay for police to defend themselves. They should be defending this young woman.
From what?
The police are treating this exactly the same as they did and are doing in Rotherham, blaming the victims instead of stomping out the perpetrators. The families in Knowsley realise this, so they are not taking any chances. Terence Munro, that young girl deserves a lot of credit for the way she dealt with that situation. Ewan Chambers, the girl was dead polite in her refusal. As for the cops, at least one a week is before a court for sexual offences. That's actually real.
Yeah, that one's deep there.
Robert Jackson, who could ever have imagined that this would happen in our country? Wake up, people. The COVID prisoner, 100% support Knowsley standing against this
Migrant BS. Yeah, yeah. The people are trying to protect the young woman, normal, natural, and brave behaviour. If that's right wing, then being right wing is a good thing. Oh, you know, see, there's a lot of fake heroes in this chat. With all due respect, because again, this has been going on for years in this country, and it is a problem. But you guys only want to be heroes when the perpetrator is not similar to what you look like, and that shows you're a hypocrite. Because I myself have said this before, that one of my friends got essayed by a guy from Afghanistan. When I tell you the way that we handled this individual, I don't care where you're from, bro. You're getting hands and feet, respectfully. But with these people, it's like they got one eye open and one eye closed. When it comes to, you know, brown men doing it, that angers them, and it goes back to this insecurity thing, like, and it goes back to their bias, I guess. But again, I guess you all have a level of bias, but in situations like this, there should be no bias, because you don't do any justice to the victims. You're politicizing the victim's pain for your own racist agenda.
Facts.
And that's what Tommy Robinson has been doing for years when it comes to the white English girls. He's used their stories to target the Muslim community, not because he generally wants justice, because we already know that Tommy Robinson spent a lot of his donations on drugs and gambling and whatnot. So he ain't really done anything for the victims in terms of that. But he's used actual victims who have suffered deeply to attack the Muslim community. And this is why it's also almost a case of right message, wrong person. Yes, we should all be against the abuse of young children. We should all stand up and fight against this, but not for personal reasons, not for biased reasons, not for hateful reasons, for good reasons that we generally care about the suffering of children. You know? And I'll be honest with you, I find it very strange sometimes that a lot of men are like the frontliners of this situation. And this is, I feel like more women should be actually getting involved in stuff like this, because we understand victims from a womanly perspective. We would know how to nurture and care for them, right? Compared to some of these guys, like, oh, what did he do to you? What, he did that to you? Then he's going to go and just make it all worse and worse. And she's grieving. When a woman is grieving, especially with these certain things, she doesn't need a big commotion around her situation. She doesn't need her whole situation to be publicized. Like, really and truly put yourself in the victim's shoes, that you've gone through this pain. And I'm not speaking about this specific lady, this young girl, but I'm speaking about the grooming gang victims who have been raped and sexually assaulted. And yet you've got this crazy madman using your situation to start a race war. That's why actually a lot of Tommy Robinson's victims, one victim, I forgot her name, I was going to interview her, she refused to work with Tommy Robinson. And I got to give this girl so much credit, because she said, yes, even though Pakistani men did this to me, I'm not out here hating on all Pakistanis. Even though Muslims did this to me, I'm not out here trying to say that all Muslims are bad. And she refused to sit down with Tommy Robinson, and Tommy Robinson actually attacked her. How are you going to attack a victim? Because
to the victim. Why is he attacking the victim?
Not physically attack her, but he verbally abused her and shunned her, you know, and actually tried to say she's not even a real victim. When this I need to find the lady's name. I was going to interview this lady, but yeah, she refused to sit down with Tommy Robinson. I'm not running with that. I know what happened to me, but I'm not going to use my situation to go out here and target the whole Pakistani community. And this woman actually got raped by a Pakistani guy and had a child out of rape. So she has, if anything, every excuse to jump on this, I hate Pakistanis, I hate Muslims, and she didn't. She refused to do that. She refused to fall for that narrative.
That's wild. I didn't even know that, man. You're dropping me some next gens. I didn't even know all of that stuff there. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we could go for hours on these comments. But you know what? I'm gonna let look. I let you read the comments. If you want to read the comments, CBN GB News. Yeah, if you want to read the comments, go there, because there's so many comments and they're all they're pretty much the same. Like, they're just pretty much the same for me. I should do a comments video, you know, when I just read comments, because I swear some of these comments are just like, they're crazy. Like, look at this comment.
I love the comment section. It's lit. The comment section is lit.
These people are trying to protect their young women normal behavior. If it's right wing, then being right wing is a good thing. See, like, to me, that's wild. Like, to someone even say that and think that, yeah, that's normal. I hope these protests spread across every town and city in the UK. We need to keep our children safe, and the establishment aren't giving a toss about them. Now, you see them comments there, yeah, is where things start to get dangerous. Because we can't say because of one isolated case, and for me personally, the isolated case is not as bad as people are making it seem. He asked for a girl's number. It's not like he touched her or physically. Then I could be like, yeah, let's all go mad about this. I'm on your thing. But man, asking for a number, I'm not gonna because I know there's probably guys that do even worse than that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, man. Like I just feel like people wanted to say anything for something to come out. Does it make sense? Like
they've been bored. You see the Muslim name hasn't been trending for the past couple of years, really and truly. Ain't been no major terrorist attacks. Nobody's really been talking about our community. And so now they're trying to revive that because they're all frustrated that their own government is treating them bad. Their own government is hitting them badly in terms of this economic crisis. They want someone to blame. They want someone to point fingers at.
what you say, were they perfect victims?
Absolutely. Perfect victims. Perfect victims. So I see what is happening. All of these things that these people are highlighting, you need to take it up with your government. You need to protest with all your hearts and all your might against the government. And wallahi, I'll stand next to you. Because they're the main people that are causing this divide. They're the main people that are allowing these perpetrators to get away with what they're getting away with. They are the cause of these issues. But unfortunately, low IQ people, they will start taking it out on the migrants. Innocent people have absolutely nothing to do with it. And if we can redirect this anger to the government, we're winners.
Facts. But another episode, Rare Reactions. Bow. Make sure you subscribe. Follow her on social media. What's your social media handles?
Zubayd Al-Arabi, yeah.
Yeah, come on. Make sure you follow her on all social media, yeah? Every single thing. Everything to do with social media, follow her. Yeah? Whether it's TikTok, everything. Go check her YouTube out. It's lit as well. Shout outs to Red Talks.